Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame It's a Small Town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and with me today is a locally grown young man, well, younger than me anyway, who attended Crocker Middle School in Hillsboro and Burlingame High School and graduated in 1977. He then went on to attend the University of Southern California, majoring in film, and graduated in 1982. According to LinkedIn, he is or was a top-tier executive for the Once Upon a Time theatrical film company. He has written numerous publications and maybe a book or two, and was the San Mateo Times golf editor for 11 years. He likes to say he speaks Technicolor English. It just depends how angry he is. The ladies like to call him Gibby. I'll call him Gib. My guest today, Gib Papazian. Gib, thanks for being on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me, Mark.
Well, you know what? You're not an easy guy to get a hold of. You're very busy.
Well, juggling a lot of grenades.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned before we got on the air here a little bit about KMBR. Did you know Tommy Simpson, by any chance, golfer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was actually on one of the shows one time when I was on John Abendroth's show, Hooked on Golf, after the release of our golf architecture book.
Is that right? Yeah. So did he was after you at Burlingame High School?
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a little younger than me.
Okay.
He's smooth at the mic, let me tell you something.
He's very smooth.
I was sitting there scratching my head.
And
Wow, he's
I
good.
think he is a USC grad as well.
Oh, is he one of us? I didn't know.
I
one
believe
of the few and the proud. Beautiful.
I believe so.
Well, of course he's good. He's got class, right?
Yeah. Was the intro okay? Any faux pas there?
Oh, no faux pas. I actually started at the end of kindergarten at West Hillsboro School, so I'm a full Hillsboro brat.
Absolutely. I love
Top
it.
to bottom, and then a Panther,
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, so you spent a lot of time Hillsboro and then going to Burlingame High School. So, how about some memories of Burlingame High and Crocker? Did you do any time at Crocker? Was it all at West?
No,
you go from West to Crocker,
yeah,
right?
Well, yeah, in those days it was only 7th and 8th grade at Crocker. So
right.
And then I went there, and of course everybody gets split up after that. But I spent I'm awfully attached to Burlingame, and my sister went there, my brother went there, my daughter went there, my son went there. Yeah, so we're all it's a Panther family.
Right. How about a few memories of West or Crocker, even Burlingame High? Where did you guys hang out? What did you do?
Well, it's interesting because it kind of sucks for my daughter and actually for my little brother too, because they closed the campus
right
eventually, and it was just awful because one of the beautiful things about going to Burlingame High was at lunchtime, off we go up to the avenue, and you had Wallace's Sporting Goods, and this, because we're all a bunch of ski bums and golfers and the whole rest of it. Yeah, and I could close my eyes and tell you where everything in order, every single store there. And then once they closed the campus, I think the sort of visceral, sort of experientially of going to Burlingame High really changed quite a bit, because you don't really get the town, so to speak. You don't really become part of the texture of the pavement.
And I think that was a merchant thing, wasn't it? Invading too many students coming in at one time. They had to watch everything. I'm just guessing.
The baloney excuse given to me was that the lawyers got involved and the kids were misbehaving. Well, that's all we did in the park was misbehave at lunchtime.
Of course.
We still managed to get straight A's. So you couldn't have been too stoned, right?
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. So you mentioned Wallace's Sporting Goods was there for a long time. What else do you remember about the Avenue?
Just all of it, just the different places. Sam's Italian Sandwiches. Well, I was there. I was there the day they opened. Strangely enough,
really,
medium special every day. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, for sure. And it was, and it's interesting that we're still, my high school homies, the usual suspects we're still hanging together today.
That's great.
I'm 64 years old. I mean, you know my best friend, right?
Yeah, Andy Knox.
Yeah. So everybody, if they're still alive, they're
you guys are still pals.
Oh yeah, no, just all 49er games is a mandatory for sure.
Yeah. So I got a little notation from somebody telling me that they wanted to bring up a little something about Crocker Middle School, if that's okay with you, and if it's not, I'm going to bring it up anyway.
Okay, that's all right. Well.
Apparently, back then you were kind of a playful young man and had a couple of playful young buddies, and there was a particular teacher there, a Mr. Marafino, who,
Yes.
if I guess his disciplinary techniques were a little bit different than just staying after school and writing on the chalkboard. Can you tell me what he did that was a little bit different?
He hated me and all of my friends. I'll start with that right there. But Mrs. Oricello did too. And actually, I'm not going to say that we were constant misbehaviors at Crocker, but I'm going to say that we were mischievous.
Yeah.
I can now, because the person that I did it with has passed away, but yes, we did in fact take the incense bomb and put it in the central in the central ventilation system.
I love it. Yeah.
Twice. Yeah. So it was pretty well. I mean, I do remember most of the teachers, and I was to be honest with you, when I was in elementary school and I started, I was identified as a special needs student essentially, which is that must be why God gave me one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And by the time I was in Crocker, it's actually kind of funny because they give you IQ tests, right? And then we broke into the file, of course, and I found out that I was the third dumbest kid at Crocker, which is how I ended up at USC Film School apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, but there was, I was actually. What was his name? Was Mr. Yarborough. He actually wrote a narrative about me that went into my record that I had actually got to read to me that I was almost illiterate.
Yeah.
So because I couldn't diagram a sentence apparently, so that's how I became a writer because it's the illiteracy that I learned at Crocker School. Yeah.
Well, I had heard, and we'll do a fact check on that Mr. Marafino took you and your sidekick one day after whatever you guys did and kind of turned you guys upside down?
Yes. Mr. Marafino was not very happy with us often.
Yeah.
And Mr. Schwartz, he was the principal at the time. He was always actually very nice and very understanding.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny. Years later, I was wandered into a bar in Foster City. Who knew? Me in a bar with my buddies, right?
Right.
And there he was having a margarita, and I just pulled up a chair next to him, and I looked at him and I said, "Oh my God, it's Mr. Schwartz." And he looked at me and said, "Oh, it's Gibby."
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. It was really something, and we really got. I sat there with him for well over an hour, and just kind of reminiscing or what have you. And I mean, and he actually got a kick out of us.
Yeah.
He admitted that that we kind of kept the place. We kept things lively.
You kept it lively.
Yeah,
Boy.
for sure. Yeah.
So where did you guys hang out? Was there a special place that you would go to when you were in high school, done with Crocker, now you're in high school? Did you go to, were the rec dances still around by then?
Oh, the rec dances are still rolling along. Oh yeah, sure they were. I mean, it was just straight to Sam's, and then we were just hitting the pavement all the time. I mean, because all the store owners know it, and we were all, like I said, we're ski bums, and we were just kind of just in and out of everywhere. And it's really funny, this strange sensation that I have that I walk down Burlingame Avenue like nearly every day because I only live 2 blocks away or 2.5 blocks away. It's really funny because sometimes when I'm talking to somebody like Brooke Dunbar, so people who are from here, I'll say, "Where is that?" And I'll say, "Well, it's where the old feed store used to be." Or you remember where? And we still use references to like where old Uncle Gaylord's was,
right? Or where Simpsons was, or Smith and Heller.
And any of them in there, with the nitrous canisters and every kind of knucklehead thing.
Yeah.
We're basically a bunch of mid-70s stoner hippie kids. I mean, that's what we were.
When you were at Burlingame, was Flings there, or was it Royal Donut Shop by then?
It was a Royal Donut Shop.
So Flings was gone.
Yeah, it was Royal Donut Shop.
Okay.
Back then, yeah.
And did you ever go to Nelson's Coffee Shop on the where the Ricky Sporting Goods was and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I wandered in there every now and again, but not that
right.
often. I get my coffee at the Royal Donut Shop every morning right now. Right?
You still do it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Awesome. Yeah. But you had open campus, obviously, then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. While you were in high school, even while you were in middle school, did you play any sports? Were you in the drama club or anything like that?
It was live, eat, breathe, and always golf. We just, it was in springtime.
Was Dad a golfer or Mom? Is that why you got into it?
Dad was a golfer. Dad was a very enthusiastic golfer. I mean, he was never better than a 7 handicap. But I joined the Olympic Club when I was 14 years old. Right. So it was. But the strange thing is that I played for Ron Anderson in the old days.
Well, he was the football coach, wasn't he?
But Chick Hines, Chick Hines gave me my first putting lesson, right? And Chick had just given it up, and Ron was the coach there for 28 years. And it's so odd and ironic that years later, I took over the golf team with Ed Larios.
Yeah, Coach Larios.
Yeah, so yeah, and Ed of course wasn't an indifferent golfer. He wasn't a golfer at all. He just kind of,
Right.
I was writing for the Times for years, and he was such a rah. I love Ed, but
Yeah.
he was like, but you can't give the locker room speech to a bunch of varsity golfers.
It doesn't work, right?
Yeah, so it was really cool. And
Yeah.
I was a golf writer at the time, and he said, "Look, I need you to come take over the team because we're in last place." And I'm like, "Well, why me?" And I told him no, and he just beat me up till I finally did it.
Yeah,
And I
so
said,
you
"Okay,
did
fine."
it.
Yeah, I finally
Okay.
did it. And it was in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
We ended up winning the league, and just straight up. And I had and a lot of those little boo-boos, I'm still in contact with them now. They're all like grown-ups now.
Yeah,
It's been about 15, 18 years now.
That's
But
great.
yeah, I did it for a few years, and I really enjoyed it. And it was strangely enough, I teach special needs golf every summer right now too, which is
that's
for
awesome.
Special Olympics golf, which is
Yeah.
really it's a very rewarding thing. I did girls golf just once, but that's in the fall. In those
Why'd
days.
you get away
can't
from
go a whole
coaching?
year.
Why did you get away from coaching?
It was just, it just got to a point. Well, part of it was is that when Matt Bigger was the
Principal?
yeah, he was the principal, and Matt did not like Ed, and at all a bit, and then arranged for him to be transferred.
Right.
You ran him out of town. And and then I was the golf writer at the time, and I wrote a couple of articles that he just didn't like the truth.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the hate mail I got from Willie Brown's office when I was writing about the Public Utilities Commission and land use stuff and the whole rest of it there too. So at that point, right now, it was just kind of like when he got rid of Ed, I just said, well, that's 5 years is enough.
That's
and
a
was
wrap.
the end. Yeah, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
But we went from last place, and they're going to dump us in the lower league, and we ended up winning. We ended up doing great, and a lot of
Yeah.
those kids went on, and my pet protege, kid by the name of Ryan Gonzalez. Interesting, half Japanese, half Mexican. How odd is that? And he ended up getting a full ride scholarship to USF and became a golf professional.
No
before
kidding.
he lives in Europe now. He married one of the girl in the girls' golf team at USF, and he's living right outside of Germany right now. He's got some big shit job, but he's
Terrific.
yeah. So it was, and I'm still in contact with him. So it was a
Good.
really So it was great stuff. It really was.
All right, so then you go on to USC and you go to their wonderful film school that they have. Okay, so I have this picture of you then. What were you doing, running around Burlingame High School with your Super 8 Super 8 camera? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. You went to Hillsborough, so it had to be a Super 16 or a 32 millimeter.
No,
You probably had a film crew
there was
with you.
actually-
No, really, how did that happen? How did you happen to go to film school, playing all this golf and everything, and you decide, hey, I'm going to go to USC and go to film school?
It's interesting because it begins, believe it or not, at the Castro Theater in 1968. I'm 9 years old. My parents,
San Francisco.
yeah, right, yeah, and my mother and father is like, and there's this movie that has come out that's just that's wildly controversial, and my parents decide, okay, we're going to take, because it's G-rated. It was 2001.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Well, of course. So so we go and we see this movie, and I'm hypnotized. It's like my first Grateful Dead show. It was like putting a needle in my arm, and that's it. And it just never went away. And after seeing 2001, I remember standing out in the lobby, and my mother and father look at me, and my mom said, "What'd you think about that?" I said, "That is the greatest movie ever made." I'm 9 years old, right?
Yeah.
And I said, "What'd you think, Mom?" She said, "It was okay, sort of." And my dad says, "I don't think I understood it."
Yeah.
And it was, look, I'm 64 years old right now, and I still think it's the greatest movie ever made. So it just film. I was a film buff.
Did you go ahead and make any amateur films while you were in high school and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, you remember Mr. Holmes? Remember the teacher?
Yes.
We started the first film that we really got serious about was we did it for the class project. Everybody else gave a speech, a bunch of spiel, a bunch of this, and me and my cabal, with Steve Larson and Ken Peterson and Andy Knox and Jeff Lang and and Gene McAllister. And and so we made a film about police harassment. And I got to know a couple of the cops. Because remember, the police station was right there on Howard Avenue
Yes,
in those
I do.
days, right?
Yeah,
So I went in. I went in the one day. As all these hippie kids are wandering in there with the Super 8 camera and the whole rest of it, and these lights, and and then Steve Larson, we dressed him up like a cop and the whole rest of it, and we're just, and I hate to say it, but I mean, it's like we're fresh out of a Dead show. I mean, let's still, so we're not completely respectable citizens, and I convinced the cop to let us use the jail downstairs
no
to shoot
kidding.
Oh yeah, no, he just went ahead, and he thought it was so goddamn funny. It was really
that's great.
So he went ahead, and it was, and actually the only one time I've ever been arrested in my life, and it wasn't my fault, was actually I was thrown in the same damn cell down there in the basement, right?
That you made the movie from? That you guys
absolutely.
shot the movie?
Oh yeah,
That's
no, and
great.
it was a pretty good film, but it was, I was doing a lot of writing back then too. I wanted to be a playwright or write
in
movies
high school. You were doing the writing,
absolutely. Oh yeah, I was president of the comedy club. I mean, writing is still somewhat of a passion.
Yeah. Okay, so then you go on to USC.
Yeah.
Get your degree in film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I'm looking at LinkedIn, and
Right.
it gives me some verbiage here. Gib Papazian, director of photography, Storytime Productions.
Right.
And time is spelled THYME, the spice.
My wife is a multi award winning director and particularly with independent films, and she was really directed plays. She did a bunch of plays at Sarah High, broke all the attendance records. It was really cool. So I dragged her in a film. And but I came back to it after some years. I was just writing for years, and and so I had to go from the I'm trained in the film era, like literally, black and white, XX, 16 millimeter kind of stuff, and then I had to years later, all right, we're gonna get back into this head first. Well, okay, what's the first thing we do? We made a feature film. Now we won a gazillion awards for it, but I had to learn digital when all of my knowledge was film, and that was an interesting learning curve. It was.
Where did that take place? At your house?
Here. No. We decided we went. We wrote a film, and it's believe it or not, it's a film about my sister and my brother-in-law. Strangely enough, and it went all over the country, I don't know how many awards it won, Best Picture and what have you. But it's a story about a couple of ne'er-do-well. Don't make a movie about movie makers. That's rule one. We broke rule one right off the bat, and because they were screenwriters, and at one point my sister had gone to a voodoo lady, and who had convinced her that if you just put the object of your heart's desire into this magic box that had fur all over it, this voodoo lady gave her, and you put these magic oils onto the whole rest of it, and you go bury it in the backyard, it will grow the fruits of prosperity. Well, it's the silliest thing I'd ever heard in my entire life, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I just heard about this vaguely from my mother, right? Who was like, well, she's nice. I said, all right, fine. I paid absolutely no attention. One day the phone rings, and my wife, Dee Dee calls me. She's like, honey, your sister's here. What is she doing? Well, she has a shovel, and she's in the backyard digging a hole. And it's like, and it's just like, and she said, why don't you go dig that hole? And she's, well, I live in a condo. What am I going to do? Put it in the planter box? She says, did you ask your brother about this? And she's like, well, no. He's a deadhead. He'll think it's totally cool. He's into the hocus pocus. And to this day, right now, and we ended up making a film about our experiences and her experiences. And her film was never made, but a film was made as a result. And that screenplay is still buried in our backyard to this day.
Really?
Yeah, my mother was so freaked out about it that she actually took some Morton salt, and she came when I was out of town on business, and then she went and she put salt around the grave of this screenplay in the magic box, and then she did it all the way around the property because she was afraid that my sister had brought in some bad voodoo.
Oh, so the salt would keep them out somehow?
Yeah, absolutely keep them out, or actually it might have just locked them in. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what the logic was at the time, right?
So that was what Once Upon a Time Productions was about?
Well, yeah, we started.
We
needed to form a production company because it was the first film since Harold and Maude that was made on the San Francisco Peninsula. Matter of fact, we were going to shoot one of the sequences in the Harold and Maude house in Rose Court, but we couldn't make the schedule work. So,
where was all the work done then? Was there
it's unbelievable, except for 2 or 3 sequences that were in San Francisco or up on top of Mount Diablo. Almost everything was shot within 3 miles of where we sit right here.
Okay, so where was all the film editing done and the sound?
We have
work and all that?
we actually took the second floor of our house and we just took a whole big chunk of it, and we have an entire editing suite. All the equipment we have, my cinema cameras, and we have it's a film studio full of lights, and I keep those at my company here in Burlingame.
Is it still there?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
But you got out of that now, right?
Well, no, we didn't get out of it. We've got 3. We made 25 shorts, and they were all over the circuit for years.
What's considered a short half hour?
Yeah, well, most of these are around 14 minutes. Would
Okay.
be 14 to 18 minutes. We have 3 of them in the can. Unfortunately, my wife got long COVID, vertigo, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
so everything
boy.
has kind of come to us. So we're just we've seen every doctor in the whole world.
Right.
And this is a story for another day. But long COVID vertigo is something that that people they don't know what to do. So that old saying that the amount of potential treatments are usually inversely proportional to their effectiveness.
Okay, thank you.
Well, no. If you have
Yeah.
if your appendix is about ready to burst, there's a 100% success rate if they take your appendix out. All right.
Right.
But if there's something else non-specific there, so they just will try this, we'll try that, we'll try this. So we're in the try this, try that stage right now. But the minute,
Okay.
I shoot. I'm a cinematographer, so I shoot for other people. But I kind of don't like to, because I'm trying to run 2 other companies at the same time. So
Yeah. So that sort of maybe describes when I found this on LinkedIn again, and what a source, okay, for information.
I didn't even know I had a LinkedIn page.
For information, under your production company, it said that you described you as a cinematographer, co-producer, script revisions, location scouting, still photography, gaffer,
I don't even name. I don't know. Well, yeah, that's all true.
trash
I don't know who did
emptier,
that.
okay.
Trash emptier. That's true.
craft table cook,
Yeah, I'm
psychologist,
crafty, yeah.
and I love this one, assistant to she who must be obeyed,
Right. Yeah.
executive money raiser, and rule bender. I
Right.
mean, that's a one-man band. That's you and your wife knocking all this out, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, we
And a
had
couple of friends
we had
or a little crew? Yeah.
No, we had a full crew.
Yeah.
At one point we had 22 people in the
Yeah,
crew.
but you guys were running the show, right?
Well, yeah, and I had assistant cameras, and we had our sound engineer, and we had our post production sound. But we had 20 odd people of actors and actresses in our stable because we made so many films, and then. It's really funny because a lot of the people that we started with, a lot of the youngsters particularly, they're all ran to LA, and most of them have become very, very successful. It's really, and I'm watching them just blossom. And
That's
then a lot of the
great.
kids on my production crew,
Yeah.
because they always looked at me like, oh, he's the guru because he
Yeah.
went to USC Film School. Well, I would speak to them in film, and they would answer me in digital. Right?
Yeah.
So I actually had to. We actually ended up teaching each other a whole lot. So yeah, but there was a and we have 3 of them in the can right now. And if we can just get her up right, because when you go out on the circuit, she was Female Auteur of the Year 2016 on the United States circuit. So
Really?
yeah. So, but you got to really nobody cares about the cinematographer when you go when you go to a film festival. They want to talk to the director. They want to talk to the talent. They want
All
to talk
right,
to the
so I'm going to
producer.
ask you a question then,
Nobody cares.
you can give me the Reader's Digest version of this. What's the difference between a cinematographer and the director of photography?
Nothing. It's just a big, Vittoria Storaro was just, I am not a director of photography. I am
Okay.
it's just basically a cinematographer it's just a director of photography who thinks he's an artiste.
Okay.
It's,
Basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's
give
the
or
same
take.
thing. Don't let
Give or
anybody
take.
lie to you.
All
Yeah,
right.
there's fine shades, but for the
Okay.
most part, it's the same thing in America, anyways.
right.
A lighting cameraman is a DP in England, and a cameraman is a camera op.
I
Right,
love
so
it. Yeah.
So here, and then we have different terminology.
Yes. Kind of like disc jockey broadcaster.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Disc jockey's more fun.
Yeah, it is.
The girls are better looking.
Yeah. All right, I've got another quote. We're going to move from your film career to your writing career, okay? And I love this quote, and I'm going to hopefully not botch it.
You must
while
have
I'm
done some
saying
research
it.
or something. I don't know.
A little bit. Inflicted polarizing, opinionated rants on my readership for 11 years, demonstrating that not everybody likes the truth delivered with a chainsaw and battering arm. What the heck was that about?
Battering ram is what I would have
battering
put it.
ram.
That's
Thank
the way
you.
I would. That sounds.
Yes.
I just rewrote it in my head. I don't even remember that.
Battering
phrase.
ram. Yeah. What's that quote about?
I don't know where it sounds like something that I would have said or something.
Oh,
I would
you
have
said
written.
it. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, you used to write golf columns for the San Mateo Times, which I used to read, to be very honest with you. I think we were once a week, weren't you?
Yeah, once a week.
Yeah.
I read about 45 a year.
And I didn't play that much golf, but I did enjoy your columns. What year was that?
Oh, God.
Or years, I should say.
Oh, I think I probably 95 to 2006 or so.
Yeah.
And then I was doing the books in between that. My editor used to call it full contact golf writer because I wrote about a lot of things that were very sticky issues. That it's not just just like Mr. Havishire made an eagle on number 18 to win the men's invitational. I was writing about Public Utilities Commission, land use issues, county construction of county golf courses, dealing with environmentalists, Marionazzi, the Sierra Club. So I really dug into a lot of issues that really made a lot of people mad. My ex-wife used to say, "We're going to get a Molotov cocktail through the window one of these days."
Yeah.
My editor used to say, "You're just the golf writer. You get more mail than anybody else."
How did the Times gig come about? I mean,
it's really funny. I took a. I've always been fascinated by golf course architecture and the history of it, and so around 1988, I had a dear friend, Rick Shore, who passed away some years ago. I wrote his obituary, strangely enough, and I told him that I'd read all these books on golf course design by Alistair Mackenzie and Robert Hunter and Charles Boyd McDonald and what have you, and so I'd read 8 or 10, 15, 20 books. And I said, I really want to go visit some of these storied places here in the United States. I eventually went all over the United Kingdom and Ireland and wrote travelogues there. But at the time, it was just Pinehurst and the New York Met area and what have you. And I read all these books, and then one day, one of my friends looks at me and says, well, you're a really good writer. Why don't you write a golf column? And I said, well, I never thought about that before. So I took the Times like everybody else did here, right? And and they had a guy by the name of Chip something or Chip Knox, and he was he was okay, but he wrote about local yokel kind of stuff. He didn't dig into it because he was a golf fan, but he wasn't a student of the history of it. And so that I just came tottering in there one day and hi, here's my name, and they just John Horgan was. You remember John Horgan was.
Sure.
And John was. He's a grumpy old curmudgeon, right? I mean. So I come wandering in there, and Terry Greenberg is there, and he's our editor, and he says to me, just go write something. Let me see it. And I say, all right, fine. So I just went home and I wrote a story about my very first experience in the road hole in Scotland. And it's a very funny story, and I won't go through the chapter and verse right now. So I just went in and I just handed it to him, and he just gave me the harumph, and then Horgan gave me the harumph, and I just kind of walked out of my tail between my legs. Why the hell did I deal with that, right? It's like these guys, these guys obviously hate me, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that they would have never read it, and they were just trying to give me the brush off. And 2 weeks later, I get a phone call and says, Horgan wants to see you. Well, who are you? Well, just come down here. So I go down, I sit down. And he says, so what do you want to do here? I said, well, I said I'd like to write a feature once a month. He says, no, you're not. I said, well, what? He said, we just let the golf writer go. He lives in Modesto, and you're writing a weekly column.
Wow. And
I starting when? He said, today's Friday, so you have a deadline on Monday afternoon. So get with it.
Get to
and
work.
I'll never forget what he said. I looked and I said, well, what do you want me to write about? He said, you're the golf writer. I don't give a shit what you write about. Just make it interesting. And he turned around and walked off. Never said another. You knew Horgan, right?
Absolutely. He was a guest of ours last year or the year before.
I mean, he was he wanted a football, baseball, basketball, the major sports, this and that. And he just he thought golf was a nuisance, and the golf writer is a nuisance to him, right? Yeah. So I just So I just...
But nice, he kind of gave you free hand then, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think my second column was, you remember Mr. Buddy, right?
I don't know if I do or not.
Oh, Ken Hoffman. He was the clown with the all over Burlingame.
Boy,
Kenny was. Anyways, yeah. So he had a charity putting deal. So and he used to come to the library here and read to little kids. Yeah, he was a clown.
Great stuff.
He was in 75 movies or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I started to slowly get into, because I was very involved in land use and getting a county golf course constructed here, which is because, and there's a long, ridiculous story about the recreational easement and the screwing that San Francisco gave San Mateo County. It was supposed to go right off. It was supposed to go right off of Edgewood Road over there.
But what was wrong with the Coyote Point one that we had then?
The Coyote. Well, it's interesting. I was really deeply involved in that too. That was when Steve Halsey was brought in, and Tim Heck was the general manager, and they put together a quote unquote citizens committee. But there's only three of us that really knew it. So I was deeply involved in that, because I grew up playing San Mateo Muni. I joined Olympic when I was a kid, but you don't get to Olympic when you're 14 years old.
No,
right?
you don't. Right.
So we're down there, and Guy Young,
playing
the same
Muni
guys
all
I
the
still
time.
play golf. Yeah, so I was playing Muni all the time there, and then we got Sheila Kanzian was the head of San Mateo Park and Rec, and she coughed up $10 million, and they put Amphium Development in to redo the clubhouse, move it. So Steve Halsey and we built and designed a new golf course. That's where that thing is right there. This is a county. That's a city golf course. I'm talking about a county golf course that was supposed to have been constructed.
Right.
Okay. And the deal was, when they moved 280 under San Mateo County land in 1966, a recreational easement was created, and in exchange for that land down there was going to be for horse equestrian and hiking and golf course and this and that. So, of course, the freeway went in, and instantaneously the environmentalists around here that are completely insane, all of them, they just went in and they just started filing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And then basically they end up, it's the same war of attrition that they did with the big wave, special needs housing project here.
Yes.
Everything involving the Committee for Green Foothills and that whole crew, and the Sierra Club and the interlocking, they're just basically just a bunch of rich people that don't want anybody disturbing their little kingdom.
Yeah.
So, that's basically what it is.
Yeah. Save some of that energy, because we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay.
I will tend to take you on bird walks sometimes.
All right. So I'm doing some more background research on you, right?
Okay.
And I don't know how I stumbled on Quora. And just for our listeners out there,
oh God,
Quora is a question and answer platform that allows users to ask and answer questions on a wide variety of topics.
Right.
So I have to say, man, you were pretty good with your, it seems like a lot of maybe university kids were firing questions at you, but you were answering them very nice, very good information. How'd you get the whole Quora thing?
My wife's a writer too, and she's and one day she showed it to me, and I said, "Oh, that's sort of interesting." She said, "Why don't you answer this question?" And I just puked something out. It comes out of me pretty easily.
Yeah, but it was good information. If I was a student, I think a couple of them asked you what's the difference between going to UCLA Film School and USC Film School, and you just didn't raise you just weren't going fight on. You explained both sides of the picture, and I thought it was pretty good.
Well, it's a philosophical difference. It's just like I used to do work for the American Film Institute down there, and they're all a bunch of you got to smoke a jeton and have tight pants on and be an auteur. You're going to go to the American, right? If you go to AFI,
okay.
And if you go, if you go to UCLA, because you fund a lot of your own films, but everybody goes to UCLA. Most of the ones there, they end up wanting to be. They all go there to be a director. Let's go to do a lot of the schools down there. If you go to USC Film School, you're what we call camera ready. You're like when because you get pigeonholed, and you're going to get pigeonholed as a sound guy or whatever. But when you leave USC, you're going to be ready to walk right onto a Hollywood set, and you're going to get yelled at and go given a bucket and tell them, "Go get me some sprocket holes." And you're going to get screwed with something fierce, but they're going to know you're going to know what you're doing. So that's
right.
It's more of a USC Film School is more of a technical school. Yes, we've got plenty of directors and we have plenty, but it's a grinder school. They will beat you to death. You will be. you will be. All the teachers used to say that the only people more tired running around this campus pre-med are the kids that go to the film school.
Yeah. Well, I just thought your answers to all these kids and folks in general were very good. They weren't sarcastic or whatever, and or biased. They were just good answers.
Well, I mean, they're good. So if you just say, I want to be a director, that's all I want to be. Well, SC is probably not the place for you, because probably 10% of the kids are going to end up. Everybody is going to direct a few films on their web. We have what we used to call 290, and they do it in video now. George Lucas is actually in 2006 is the one that stamped his foot and said no more film, of all people, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to go all digital at that point right now. But ultimately you're going to direct you're going to direct a certain amount. But once you get into the upper divisions up there, you're getting pigeonholed. Not everybody directs, we used to call 480 project, which is, a 35-minute picture, because you're the director, and then that director is going to pick, a guy who's going to be the sound engineer, and who's going to be the camera guy, and who's going to be this and who's that, and then that's what ye shall do, right? Because that's what you're good at, and people just tend to fall into what they're. If you're a really good editor, you're going to end up being a cutter.
Yeah,
that's like and usually it's my opinion that the very best directors are usually the very best editors. They're almost the same person a lot of the time.
It seems like to me they would be one and the same.
Well, there's
a lot of work
they are.
going on
There's a lot of directors that have the vision, the visual, the visual patina that they have in mind, but they're not as good at the pacing and sort of the story arc texture. But almost all editors who have a lot of editing experience usually are at least a pretty damn good director, because they know in their head, what they want. And there's a lot of great directors that don't cut. Clint Eastwood doesn't cut his own picture. Marty Scorsese doesn't cut his own pictures. Kubrick cut a lot of them, but he was pure auteur. But I mean, a lot of them. But just as a general.
Wait a minute. What's pure auteur? Excuse me.
Pure auteur is just somebody who just controls every aspect of the production, from start to finish. It's he wants to line up all the shots. Now Kubrick had some great cinematographers that he had, but he also was a great cinematographer himself too. So you got to kind of. You have to kind of balance it out. But the true auteurs are the ones that they want to write it, they want to produce it, they want to direct it, they want to line up all the shots, they want to they want to tell the art director what the hell to do, right? I'm married to kind of an auteurish kind of person, but she's got a doctorate in education,
okay.
So what am I going to do?
All right. Okay, so we're going to move away from golf and writing and film production, et cetera, to, I think, to your job that pretty much takes up a lot of your time. You're president of Lucky Strike Farms. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say that's your real job right now?
Well, it's one of the two of them. I have to run a family property company now too. Now that I'm an orphan, I've lost both my parents. But I've been doing this. I've been doing this for 42 years.
Well, let's talk about Lucky Strike Farms. First of all, what is Lucky Strike Farms, and where is it located?
Well, our home office, our ranches are in Salinas, but we source out of all over, out of Northern California, so the Central California, Yuma, Imperial Valley, or what have you. I moved us to Burlingame. It's our home office just some years ago. But we have been in this area as the home office in between here and San Francisco really since probably.
So where's the home office in Burlingame?
It's where Cowan Road is.
Yeah.
That super expensive fish place that everybody goes to.
Right.
With the lobster joint.
Right over there.
Right across the street.
Yeah, New England chowder.
Yeah, whatever
or something.
the heck it is. Yeah. And we manage the building too.
Okay.
So we've got an upstairs and a downstairs, and that's where a big chunk of it is where all our film production equipment is, and then we have accounting and I'm the sales upstairs. But since COVID, there's kind of me and Andy are the only two that are in there every day anymore.
So Andy's working with you?
Yeah,
and just tell my listeners quickly, Andy Knox, who we're referring to as my produce manager at Molly Stone's for many years, and anyway.
I got Andy into produce.
Yeah,
the one that,
really?
He's a ski bum in Tahoe. We grew up
that
together.
I knew, yes.
I met him when he just got here from England for the first time, when he was like 13 years old. So he said, I need a real job. And I was like, okay. So I took him down to Pack and Save and introduced him to one of my friends and beat the hell out of him for a couple of years. Then he came to you guys
to
for
Molly's.
28 years.
Right.
For 28 years, yeah.
Right. Okay, so do you go to work? Do you go over there every day, or do you
Every
stay
day.
home and walk? So there's no remote work. I mean, they're so close by.
I do a lot of remote work because I'm on the road a lot because I go visit our growers and our
Yeah.
our farms and I distribute for a lot of citrus growers and in our farms I have ground leased out and we got a potato farm I'm going to do tomorrow up in Southern Oregon.
So you sell a variety. You work with a variety of produce.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some things that I stay away from, and I've got a lot of colleagues that. It's just somebody wants strawberries, here call my friend Lewis. And wants some tomatoes, you call this guy or what have you. So there's a cabal over the 40-odd years we've all been doing. I mean, we're all best friends. I mean, we all kind of support each other and refer each other to business because if you're kind of one of the trustworthy guys, right? And you get one of your customers and hook them in with somebody. So it's a hookup business.
So you've been in it for 40-something years.
Well, I'm doing it full time, 40. Well, I mean, I sold my first load of carrots when I was 12 years old, so longer than that. But I've been at full time since '82. But I mean, remember I was back and forth making films in the '80s too. So
is it a 5, 6, 7 day week grind for you or what?
Nah, not anymore. No, we're just we don't chase stuff. And we were a really big company a few years ago, and then just kind of slowly but surely it's not just it's corporate attrition and guys retire and you just kind of and I just at this.
So, do you have your pretty much steady customers? You don't have to go out and chase customers or what?
I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
No. I mean, we just and we're we've got everybody in our company is been there years and years and years. I mean, guy Tommy Cook, we've been together now for 36 years.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, leave or so I mean, and some of the guys that were our customers at one point. So we really have any kids coming in there. And, no kid wants to work.
Nobody wants to do that.
No, nobody wants. It's too hard, and it requires. It requires 5 years just to have a half-assed idea of what you're doing because we're basically guiding people, not only just selling our own stuff but also just guiding people. Nah, I wouldn't do that. Let's do it this way. So you got to be an expert in harvests and seasons and commodities and transportation. And I ship all over the country and we ship all over the world. So you got to. Like a truck driver will call me, hey, I'm at the GW Bridge. What do I do? Okay, we'll cross there, go to 125th Street Bridge, get into the Bronx and what have you. You have to, also be able to just close your eyes and know where everything is.
So are you on the road a lot?
Yeah.
Out of California?
Not as much as I guess I'm, spend a lot of time trying to take care of my wife. So we were dealing with the COVID thing. But
right.
I traveled constantly. I was like, if there's, I'm a Hilton diamond for life. Let's put it that way. If there's a Hilton on Neptune, I can stay there for free.
But out of California, across the country?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm going to be going to Canada here pretty quick. And, I used to be in New York probably 4 times a year.
No kidding. Yeah.
In Chicago. Yeah, I just got off the phone. Coming here, I was just on the phone with my Chicago guys. Yeah, so, I mean, but they're guys that I've had for years and years and decades. And then, when they finally retire, then the son or the little boo-boo that just got out of business school, then they just give them my number, and then I'll get a call from the boss who's just like, all right, I got this kid here. Break him in. Don't let him screw up. Okay, you want me to babysit? You want me to train and babysit your guy? Okay, great.
Basically.
But I've been doing that my whole career, so fine, whatever. I mean, I'm 64 years old. I mean, some little 23-year-old snot-nosed kid, and it takes him usually it takes him a couple of weeks to realize, oh, maybe I should do what he says.
Yeah. Good point. Okay.
Right.
We are going to, and I'm going to use this word because it's kind of overused, I think. We're going to pivot now. Okay?
Pivot.
Pivot, yes.
Right.
To something that's very special to you.
Right.
And we're going to talk about special kids, special adults.
Right.
Okay? And I've got a bunch of, I hate to use the word bullet, but I got a bunch of bullet points here that I'm going to kind of reel off to you and let you run with it, okay?
I guess, yeah, sure.
And we'll start with... you mentioned it earlier. We didn't get into it, but Special Olympics golf. What's the deal with that?
Well, it's just. I mean, it's something that I can teach because I've taught golf and coached golf my whole life and played my whole life. So but I have a special needs son.
I was going to ask you, what was the motivation? Right.
Well, it was, it's first off, I was one. So
right.
I mean, they did everything they could to flunk me. Like I said, I left Crocker, and it was like, I was described as being barely literate.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up being a writer. I was just telling you before, there was an indictment on the education system, I guess. I'm just kidding. No, maybe I'm not. No, and then my twins were born, and of course my daughter is an absolute genius. USC. Made finance, summa cum laude, one of those, and my son Nick is he has Capital A autism, no doubt.
How old is Nick?
They're both 26.
Yeah, I kind of watched Nick grow up.
Well, yeah, of course you did.
Yeah.
You've been looking Nick forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's a 26-year-old, and he works at the Square Pigs Horse Ranch, which is dear to my heart.
Where
also.
is that?
Right now, it's in Montero. They moved it to Montero. It was actually about halfway down 92, and then it was up in a canyon up there, and they moved it to Montero. Right at they used to call it the. God, I can't remember what they had a different. It was called the Sun Valley Ranches.
Okay.
It's like if you're coming from San Francisco, you come through the tunnel, right there, go down the hill at the very bottom of the hill. Just
there it is.
To your left. There it is. Yeah. So
does he come home every night?
Oh well, no, he's there. He's there 5 days a week now.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, and a bus picks him up. And
Good.
Takes him over there, and he's got his little homies that he is with every day.
All right, so we're going to move on now. So there's something called budget constraints. Is there tell me a little bit about that issue? Is there problems getting money?
Well, yeah, it's just that's something also near and dear to my heart, and is the impetus behind. I'm probably going to start writing again too. Although the San Mateo Journal informed me after reading some of my Facebook rants that I do not represent their values. Yeah, it's not the San Mateo Times. It certainly isn't. But no, I mean, I think that everybody who has a special needs kid, I mean, the blind terror that we all, and don't let anybody lie to you. Everybody has the same blind terror. What happens when I'm gone? And that is and it's not, and you cannot depend upon the state of California. You can't depend on the county. The whole thing is as crooked as a ram's horn. I've been dealing with it for years and years, and it's just everything is basically it's like everything else. It's like everything else dealing with government. Said the libertarian. I mean, it's follow the money. That's all there is to it. It's follow the money.
Okay, so piggybacking on that, then what happens when a special needs adult he goes beyond ages out of the system? What does that mean? Ages out of the system? He becomes too old.
Happens? Yeah. Okay. What happens is you turn 18 years old. Okay, fine. And there is a provision that you have special needs classes until their 22nd birthday. Essentially, it's really like 21, and they finish the school year. But it's basically when they're let's say, for sake of argument, or just make your marker at 22. At that point, right there, they're done. There's no more programs like school, right? A school that they can go to every day or what have you, and they just pull the rug out from under them, and it's see you later. And then so now you're at the mercy of day programs, and a day program, for the most part, are really they're basically just a marginal. It's just it's a money grab to employ marginal people. That's basically what I've found. I mean, it just is, and it's really unfortunate because just to get into the day programs around here is very difficult because there's a shortage of them because nobody wants to work, and the reason is they don't pay the people, so you get what you pay for. Like for instance, if you have my son needs a caregiver, for the most part, right? He has autism, right? So okay, so here's how the hustle works. What they do is they hire caregivers. Invariably just got here 15 minutes ago. They pretend like they train them. They're not trained. Don't let anybody lie to you. They're lying, right? Because I was on the CDAC board and the SELPA board, and I represented Burlingame and Hillsborough to the county. So they hate dealing with me because I stood on their side of the desk, right? So they really don't like, but because I can say, hey, look, I know because I was privy to everything of what was really going on. Just a good example. Right now, we are the county, and we are going to give you this organization. This organization is going to provide you helpers with your special needs son, right?
Yeah.
Or your special needs daughter, or whoever the heck it is. Okay, here's what they do. They take somebody fresh off the boat, as they say, pay them $18.82 an hour, and they're banging the county $54 an hour for providing these untrained knuckleheads.
Wow.
Basically what it is. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And this is absolutely endemic to the system.
So
nobody does anything about it.
What's the caregiver supposed to provide for Nick? Give me an example of that.
What they should be doing is like autism requires some training. How to deal with because autistic people they don't think like people with Asperger's are kind of about halfway between you and I have Asperger's, but it's hard to tell with me, right? Because you learn the world, you learn the rules of life slowly but surely, but you do. That's why I was the weird kid, right? And that's why all my friends I grew up with, they're still with them. We were all the weird kids, right? Now we're just 60-something-year-old weird kids, right? So, but this is, but autism. There's two schools of thought. Number one is they call it ABA. So you're trying to train, or you have an autistic person, and maybe they're nonverbal or they have very little language, and what they do is they try to make them the way that they educate them, and they've stopped doing this for the most part, or it's not as hardcore as it used to be, and it's like they will say like, "How are you today?" and you will train the autistic person to say, "I'm fine. Here's a cookie." It's the same way that you would train a dog.
Yeah.
It is pure objectification of these kids, and all it really does is it just makes the school district seem successful. Oh, little Jimmy can talk, right? And then so what ends up happening is they have these individual education plan. We call them an IEP, and what they do is they will just turn these people loose to train your child like he's a dog, to appear to be normal, But the difference between appropriate communication and a meaningful communication are two completely different things. You go off script. You say, "How are you today?" "I'm fine." You say to that same kid, "What's up, kid?" He'll just look at you blankly because it's not on the script that he's memorized.
Does Nick have that kind of issue?
No, because we did something which was considered at the time completely revolutionary, and now it's really spread like wildfire. I mean, I'll pat myself on the back here because I was one of the ones that, when I was on the board, stamped on my foot to make sure, because they wouldn't fund it. They would only fund ABA, which is just the objectification. So we have something called relationship. Relationship therapy is completely different. It takes a lot. If you're trying to learn A, B, C, D, E, ABA works way better because it's faster, because it's just you're just teaching the monkey a trick, right?
Yeah.
But relationship therapies begin with the basics, and the basics are there's four things. Now, my son is a Sunrise program. It's the Sunrise program. Bears Kaufman, but floor time. If any parents that have autistic kids, they'll understand floor time. But the relationship theory, the basic thing is you start out with eye contact. Half the time when you meet somebody with autism, they never make eye contact, right? They're always looking someplace else, right? So you have to eye contact, right? Physical contact. Sometimes they don't want to be touched, right? So they don't want anybody to touch them, right? So eye contact, physical contact. And then you loops of communication. I say something to you, you say something to me back, because it's a ping pong game, right? Because with ABA, you say something, they give you an answer, but you're never going to get anything more back than the bare minimum, right? But in order to have a conversation with somebody, you need to have attention span. So the first four things we do, relationship therapy: eye contact, physical contact, communication loops, and then we go to attention span. And because they have to be interested in what the other person is saying. And that takes a whole lot longer. And we use a playroom that's especially set up because a lot of times they will not look in your eyes. So you put a mirror on the wall, they look in the mirror, and you stand behind them, and they will, after a while, they will look into your eyes, looking in the mirror of the other side, but they won't look directly because it was something for autistic people. For most of them, making eye contact is extremely uncomfortable. So you have to break through.
Yeah.
You have to break through that shield to get to when you start, like friendship skills and your turn, my turn, and all of the other things that go along with it. You don't realize that you do things socialization. It's just like autistic people, we don't like to let them drive cars because everything with autistic people, everything's coming at you all at once. It's the pedestrian, it's hitting the brake, it's what gear are you in, and what's the signal, it's the car next to you, it's the bird that went by. There's just everything happens kind of all at once for a lot of autistic people. And so what we try to do with the Sunrise program is you're trying to get them to sort out and order their world in such a way that they can live without having everything overwhelming. I mean, it's described by people like on a crazy acid trip where you can't really control what, right? Except you got to be really together if you're going to be doing a lot of hallucinogenics, and they don't. They're just born that way, right?
How old was Nick when you started working with him like that?
Well, he was an ABA. Well, I call him an ABA refugee. We knew something was wrong, and then And then, of course, the school district, I didn't know any better, right? Just like a dummy like me, right? I went to film school. What do I know about special education, right?
Right.
And so they put us in pushed us to the ABA, and they had ABA therapists coming over and the whole rest of it. There's another one. They get these psych students, and they pay, at the time it was a lot of money. They're paying them $21 an hour, and they're banging the county $45 an hour in those days, which is just the craziest thing you've ever seen for just finding warm bodies. And so by the time we got to, I guess he was right at 6 years old, he was a nonverbal, tantruming, out of control, and as much of an out of control that a 6-year-old can be, but just a complete mess. Which is where, and then what ABA does, it's like breaking a wild horse. It just breaks their spirit. That's how they get them to behave. They just beat them into submission with this ceaseless repetition of crap, right? And I was like, what are we going to? So my current wife, I'd been, she got the doctorate in education, right?
Yeah.
And so one of her friends said, "Have you ever thought about relationship therapy?" So I don't know what the hell that is. What is that? So we started to read up on it, and the sort of the headwaters of that were back in Sheffield, Massachusetts. So we flew back there, and we took a 1 week long class, and then we just came back, and you set up a playroom, and in accordance with the theories, and you train people, and you give them feedback, and you're watching them on camera, and the whole idea of it is the four building blocks, and then from there, because then all of a sudden he started to get a bunch of language. The reason I ended up on the board here is I got a tap on my shoulder one day, and who are you? I'm the district psychologist. Okay, you're a little boo-boo, fresh out of, like 28, 20. I said, "So what can I do for you?" She's like, "Nick's your son?" "Yeah." "Nick's my son." "Yeah." And it was the most amazing thing is the father of ABA, Nick's mother, took classes from him at UCLA, which she majored in psychology.
Wow.
How weird is that?
That is strange.
Yeah, that's the strangest damn thing.
Yeah.
And she said, well, how did you guys? Because this is like, I guess it was probably a year and a half into it, and she's like, "Okay, I evaluated your son when he was 6.5, and that was a year and a half ago, and you went from here to here, and that's not possible." I said, "Well, obviously it's possible," because she says, "Well, I just want to know how did that happen?" And I sat her down and explained to her, and she came over to the house, and I showed her what she was doing, this and that, and then another one, and then before you know it, I just get a phone call one day from Diane Tallarico, who was the superintendent. She's like, "So, I'd like to meet you," and it's like, "Oh yes," and then before you know it, I'm on the board, right? And then they asked me to represent Burlingame and Hillsborough to the county. And then that's when I really got a lesson of just how screwed up this deal is.
Are you still doing that?
No. I just ran out. I just ran out of stomach lining, to be honest with you. After a while, it's just dealing in the education system is
when you were
pretty tough.
Going through all of that with Nick, were you getting any kind of financial support, or is there financial support? Is there any kind of help?
Yeah. They say there is, that there's not. Nick, after almost 2 years of fighting, I just got his SSI approved yesterday. 2 years.
Okay, SSI. Explain
SSI.
it.
That's federal. That's the $910 that the federal government gives you if you don't have any other quote unquote support.
Right.
I mean, and the rest of it is you just gotta fight like a banshee to get anything. That's why they got all these lawyers running around and what have you. But the problem is it's not that there isn't enough money. The problem is that there's this hemorrhaging out the side, right, to provide marginal people doing marginal jobs, and like these group homes. You walk into these group homes, and which one pays? There's level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is for the most quote unquote most severe. Well, you know what they are? They're basically warehouses. They're basically taking human beings and putting them in these houses. And I've toured enough of them, right? And you cannot work there. It's like everything else. It's locked down it's all Philippine nationals, and they're jabbering Tagalog to each other. And every single one I've ever been in, all of them, there is no exception. They go in there, and this level 4 homes pay the most. But what are these level 4 homes? What are they really? They're basically just warehousing human beings, letting them rot away as long as they are alive and breathing and fed, right? And they're just jammed into these quote unquote group homes, and it's extremely lucrative for these people. And it's just and nobody's really paying attention. And some of these day programs are the same way. I had to call the state of California on a day program my son was involved with, and I just happened to come up one day. They'd been right down the street on Cowan Road. They'd been evicted. A place called Spread Your Wings. I can say that now on the microphone because the state closed them down. Didn't yank the license.
Wow.
But they had been evicted by the landlord because they weren't paying the rent, and they're breaking all the rules, the whole rest of it. And I come out there, and I'm just dropping Nick off. It's right down the street from my office, and there's some guy, he's 55-year-old African-American guy, completely nonverbal and self-injurious, and he's pooped in his pants, and he's running in the street.
Oh, my gosh.
And there's 23 of them that are waiting for a bus that these people said because they'd been evicted. And I said, and of course, they're not even telling the parents that they've been evicted.
Yeah.
So we figured out where they were, and the whole rest of it. And my ex-wife went to go see, and then I went to go see with my wife, the redhead, and then you know how that went over. And so so we just turned him in. But it's just, I'm not going to say that they're all like that, but it's just basically de minimis pay to get de minimis people to just warehouse these people. I don't ever see any real affirmative, let's see if we can work on this. It's just basically stick them in front of a movie or whatever else they can do, and it's honestly it's sickening, and it's a giant money grab. That's basically what it is.
Wow, man. Okay, so I think you mentioned this earlier, and what's the Golden Gate Regional Center?
That's every in the state of California, every let's say section, we'll call it a section, has a regional center that is responsible for the disbursement of funds from the state of California. They get some federal money, and they get some from Sacramento and some from the county, and they're responsible for the disbursement of funds. And as a general observation, having dealt with these guys for a long time, it's you just have people there that are for years and years and years and years. There's no accountability, none. There's something called the Lanterman Act. In 1977, the Lanterman Act was named after the person who authored the bill. And it basically is just a bill. It's just a bill of rights and responsibilities the state of California is required for people who are legitimately special needs, right? And the regional centers were constructed or put together really based on the Lanterman Act to disperse the funds, to look over these organizations that are vendors to the regional, because the regional center is the conduit for the money for these day programs and what have you. And to be honest with you, they were doing such a horrendous job, and not providing anybody. Not only just not providing trained people, sometimes you just don't provide anybody. And my attorney, who's Jeff, and he's very, very close to, we went to USC together. He's like Nick's uncle, and we got the head of the regional center here on a conference call with everybody. He had never even read the Lanterman Act. And we're literally reading chapter and verse, the Lanterman Act, to the guy who runs the regional center. And this guy had never even read it before. And but we found that to be consistent everywhere you go. And the thing is, the state of California, because it's all run by one political party, let's face it, right? And in Sacramento, I know we're going to have all these lovely programs. But then what happens is, when the time comes, they never vote for the funding. So now you guys have got to make do with, you've got this much need, and of this, whatever this enormous amount of need is, and there's a hemorrhage of money going out the side to these vendors, right? Because they can't do it themselves. So these vendors are just profiteering on the system, is all that happens, right? And then so everybody's just left to just sort of scramble around, and that's what parents are facing. As these kids get older, they get older and older and older, and you have these, and basically there is no way in the world that you can privately. I mean, my son, we can't believe what my out-of-pocket is every year. But families that are not of means, that aren't running two companies like me, that haven't been saving since minute one, they just end up just being hand to mouth, and the parents die broke, and then these kids end up having no place to live, right? If they're ones that they fall through the cracks, and they just
homeless,
living in the street, right? or right, and particularly ones that are schizophrenic or stuff like that, and then that's what and they drift to San Francisco or what have you. But people don't; these are completely, and they don't care because they don't vote, and that's really what it is, right? We got Josh Becker, our state senator here, and in the interest of full disclosure, I made campaign commercials for his competitor. All right, okay, fine, okay, so he can not wag his finger, but he's more concerned with climate change here in the land of electric cars than he is actually doing something about our screwed up education system. The fact these people are not falling through the cracks because you get to a certain point and that's it. I mean, you got what you got, and if they have not been shepherded along to have as much independence as they can, right? Then they get to a point where they just become a burden on society, right? And then the parents die, and they have been failed by the system, totally failed. Which is why our front door has been a revolving door for years, where parents come to us, all right, fine, what do we do now? 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 Because they don't really get any real guidance. And the teachers around here, Patrick Myers, local boy here, I don't know if you know, right down here, he was one of my son's teachers. These teachers, they are so hardworking. It's like I want to cry sometimes when I see how tired they are. By the time they get to June, I don't know. By the time the school is out, they just need to go sleep, because being a special needs teacher is hard.
Right, it's hard work.
And then what they do is they bring these minimum wage idiots that they come in and they call them teachers' aides, and which basically just more. How many people are you going to get for $18.82 an hour?
Yeah.
What are you going to get?
What are you going to get?
You're going to get nobody. That's what you get. So guys like that, they end up working themselves literally to death.
Yeah.
And that's why Diane used to say, God rest her soul, she was a wonderful superintendent. She was a special needs teacher, and she always said, you can do it for 10 years. She said, I did it for 13. She said, I was faking it the last 3. But nobody.
There's the burnout factor.
Nobody can do it for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
If you're doing it
correctly, yeah,
absolutely. It's just 10 years. That's it. You got to go do something else. So you'll just melt down. You can't.
All right. You mentioned something about the special needs kids do not vote, or adults do not vote, right? But unless their ballots are being harvested. What do you mean by that?
Well, I just mean everybody gets a ballot. You don't like, for instance, my son gets one, but because being the libertarian that I am, I'm going to say, like, okay, if you're going to vote, I should be able to explain to him what a bond issue is, right? He's going to say, what is this? Why is this judge, okay, and this one is not? So I mean, a lot of them. So they are, unless somebody's just taking their ballot and doing it whatever and harvesting it, that's fine. But they're not the kind of people that are going to stand up and demand reparations and all the other baloney that goes on in California, because they can't speak for themselves. They're the one adult demographic in our society that nobody looks out for. I go to the federal office, the SSI office down here in San Mateo, and I was with somebody who just got here 15 minutes ago from Central America, and they have got a little 25-year-old little docent from the Democratic Party sitting there holding their hand, waiting in line to go up to the window to make sure that they get every penny that they can squeeze out of the system, but not one of them, right, ever says, hey, maybe let's try to help the people who would have no way to even know where the office is or even know how the rules and regulations work. So they're experts at manipulating the system to buy votes, but nobody wants to help these special needs adults. And I teach all of them. We're down there teaching, and I know them all. We got 26 of them, and the parents are worn out. So the parents are worn out. I mean,
especially as you get to be an older parent too.
Well,
it gets tougher and tougher.
and then when and now all of a sudden you got a 40-year-old, right? Who's marginally verbal, who really can't take care of himself. And then you're 75 and they're 80, and then all of a sudden it's like the movie Being There. It's like the Peter Sellers all over again. It's just like, except that that's a movie, right?
Yeah, this is the real deal.
That's not what really happens. And where do they go live after you? They just slip through the cracks because nobody cares.
Wow. Okay, so that kind of leads me to, I hope I can find this question in my notes here. Something about they move people to another part of the state?
Oh yeah, there was. Yeah, it was actually, and Dave Pine, who's a dear friend of mine. You know Dave, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's one of my neighbors too. And I mean, and him and I were talking about this, having coffee one day. That there is when the funding runs out, because here's the interesting. Here's the dirty little secret. So what happens is a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to go. The Golden Gate Regional Center has they call it a housing seminar. Okay. What's a housing? It's a housing seminar for special needs people. Okay. They thought that maybe 20 families were going to show up. 300 people showed up.
Oh, man. Well, sure. I mean,
300 people show up. These idiots have no idea. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to say 90% of them who walked in the door, they're just looking for a freebie. But here's the interesting thing is, you take a look, you got 300, they actually had to have a secondary room, split up the two speakers, right? And to have a secondary room for spillover there. But here's the thing, less than the state and the county are providing less than 10% of the need in San Mateo County.
Give me that again.
10%. That's 10%. In other words, for you to go find a group home with a poorly run for your kid, less than 10% of that need in San Mateo County is being attended to.
Wow.
So it ends up being a ridiculous mad scramble. So if you don't have, you don't have a parent of means like me who's going to work the rest of my life, and we all work the rest of our lives because they're, if Nick lives to be 90, right?
Yeah.
What's it cost to from the moment that I drop dead until he passes away? What's going to cost to, right? Unless he just wants to be at the mercy of the state. And what the state has been known to do is, oh, we don't have any housing here. Oh, you got a kid. Oh, you're not paying into it, or you don't have enough money, or you're just barely scraping by. Okay, we're going to go take your kid, and we're going to move your kid, right, to Visalia, where there is room. Sorry, I mean this is literally
no
the kind
kidding.
of
that goes on today.
This is the kind of nonsense that goes on because they don't have a choice. And I'll give you a perfect example, and I can't remember what the heck it was. About a year ago, I got up because I live in Hillsborough, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, okay, and the state of California has a housing crisis, right? So they're shoving all these ADUs and housing down our throats. We don't have the water, we don't have the sewers, we don't have the traffic's a mess, but we're having a housing crisis. So I stood up and I said, hey, wait a minute. Hillsborough we don't have a place to put them in Hillsborough, so we can do X amount of ADUs, we can go down below San Mateo, College of San Mateo. I said, well, what about right behind City Hall here? So I gave a little spiel. I said, wait a minute. I said, you've got the lot right behind Hillsborough, City Hall right here. Why don't you build special needs housing right there? Right, like they're trying to do big wave over the hill over here, and this is a giant need. There's a lot of people here. It's a half a block from the bus station. Because they can go up and down El Camino. Most of them don't drive, so they don't drive. They don't do drugs. They don't bring any trouble with them. Most of them keep very quiet, keep to themselves. Most of them that are functional enough are they're like Star Wars nerds, right?
Yeah.
It's basically what they are,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like I'm one too. I would know, right?
Yeah.
So and then next thing you know is that the following Sunday, SF Gate, which is just which is a liberal rag. There's a whole big huge article about me. Right, about this horrible person, naming my name, Gib, who's trying to turn all of these people. Who's trying to circumvent Sacramento's edict for affordable housing by using special needs people.
You sent me an email on that, and I couldn't bring that up from their archives.
It's February 23rd,
yeah, that looks real interesting.
2023, and it was unbelievable. Of course, my phone is exploding when this thing comes out. But every single one that called me and said, something, you're 100% right. And that's bullshit, right? That those guys, that they chose to humiliate you for suggesting that special needs people be put there. Because if you're going to be forced to build, quote unquote, affordable housing, what better thing to do? What more heroic thing is people who just drift here? What heroic thing is to take the people in that is San Mateo County special needs people, the kids that are my students, right, and give them a place to live. That's what we should be doing here. But there isn't it. It's just one here, one there, one in the middle of the neighborhood. Stuff two of them into a small bedroom, and it's basically treating them like animals. Yeah. It's crazy.
So it obviously didn't happen, and it's not going to happen, is what you're saying.
Right now they're just going to build very low and very low income housing to put them over there. And I think part of what it is because it was just the intimidation factor. These two little, and I can't remember what the heck their names are. These two little snotty little young journalists, and they're sitting there. They didn't bother to introduce themselves. They're just sitting in the back, taking notes to write a hit piece, right? And so they thought they would just make an example of me
from the gate,
right? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, but that's the thing is that there's so much of this as a result of it's intimidation. That's all they're doing. It's the cancel culture will silence everyone. And but the one need that we have in San Mateo County, our roads are crap. Basically we're hanging by a thread. California's broke again. But the one absolute need that we have is to find a place for these special needs people so that they don't fall through the cracks and live in the street or get treated like animals or have to just live in these less than subsistence situation. It's horrendous. I mean, it's just so that's something that really, really needs to be addressed, not climate change, right? In San Mateo County.
We're almost out of time. Okay. What do you say you come back, or we come back and do a whole show on this sometime? I'll do a little homework, come back, and we'll rehash.
I'll bring 2 or 3 guests here. I'll bring other people.
That would be great.
Yeah,
we could have like a little forum or conference or something like that. I would love that.
I mean, I think it's something. It's extremely important because it is a problem. It is a problem that is not going away.
It's not going to go away.
Well, they say it's 1 in 160.
Yeah.
Liar, pants on fire. It's more than that. Now, is it caused by the vaccinations? It doesn't matter at this point right now.
Yeah.
You are where you are.
Yeah.
So here's what the population is, and the time has come now where we need to do something about this because they're not only not going away, it's only going to get worse. And as more of them, right, they're stacked on one on top of another, and the funding is not there because we waste money on all these crazy giveaways. Well, okay, the people we should be taking care of first are the ones who not only that their parents have been paying taxes into this in this county for years and years and years and years, but also the ones that they're from here. You got to take care of your own peeps, right?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to come back and I'll bring a conga line of people. I mean,
You're a hard guy to corral, but I'm going to make sure it happens.
Well,
okay?
I'm only 2 blocks away.
I know that. Right? Hey, thanks for being on the show today, Gib. Thank you. This was I could see the passion. Thank you very much.
All right, bud. See you around.
You bet. I'd like to thank Gib Papazian for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. And I'd like to just give a quick plug for the films that he mentioned on our podcast. Gib has produced I Am the Edge in 2014, The Painful Side of the Pillow in 2015, and Breakdown in 2016. So if you get a chance, look them up and check them out. Special thanks to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video. Original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Wednesday, March 13th, 2024 at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.